Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to talk about Mythic Zek'voz from the healer's point of view. Starting off for this fight, we ended up going with a 5 heal. I think this fight can most certainly be 4 healed with it, but in terms of the CDs that we wanted to bring, in terms of just how safe we wanted to go into this fight, a lot of it isn't a hard DPS check, but in general what you will have is some more tight windows where everybody needs to be topped off, especially to account for some minor errors here and there in case of like the Nerubian Void Weavers, which we'll go over in just a little bit. But starting it off, you will still have the same sort of setup that you have early on. The disc will be unleashing some regular pulsing damage. You do have to watch out for the Surging Darkness, which is going to be that new order that will be coming about. It'll be a lot more randomized than it is than you'll see on Heroic. So a lot of this is going to be some more mobile healing while having to move around, while having to make sure everyone's kind of staying together. Your priority healing on the rolling deceits is incredibly important because of how much ticking damage is going out and how helter-skelter the fight really can be. So the periods that you get to stand still, your focus needs to be onto those targets. We saw very early on with Sleep, for example, actually proccing his cheat death very early because he had rolling deceit, because he actually had to run out of the group during a Surging Darkness to drop his debuff off while the darkness was going on. So rotating externals, if need be, onto one of the targets that will have rolling deceit during a Surging Darkness, they can survive the damage, but they will need some kind of external to keep them up. Right here, you're also seeing the first big ramp up that we're going to be having about a minute into the fight as the Silithid Warriors are coming out along with the Nerubian Void Weavers. I ended up running with Divine Star on this encounter because of the Nerubian Void Weavers' hard CCs. You'll actually see that the Void Weavers are trapped by the hunters, or you can poly them just to be able to get them shut down before you can move on to the next group. So basically what we did is we got the Silithid Warriors in together on top of the Void Weaver, nuked everything down, and then moved on to one of the other Void Weavers that are on the side to be able to take them down. Here at about minute 56, minute 50, you do have this combination of I-Beam along with the Surging Darkness here. Most important thing to keep in mind is that actually how much room the circle really does provide, how big these circles are, and that there's 2 sides to this circle, right? Genius, I know. But a lot of times it will pay off, especially as a healer, especially as ranged DPS, to be standing on the opposite side of the group or very far out of the group here, because it's very common for the boss to be tanked a little bit more into melee, or sorry, for the melee I should say, to move more into the ranged pile here. And that's something you always want to be watching out for, because when they start moving into you, they bring the I-beams in, it's very easy to have extra deaths there. Right after that period of time, though, you will have a really nice chill period, and there's going to be another one coming up as well. These are going to be the windows in time that you will only have ticking damage coming out from the disc and not really much else behind it until the rolling deceits are coming out. So you take that opportunity to have your channel mana potion, for everybody to channel maybe a symbol of hope, to be able to get everybody's kind of mana back and get everybody kind of reset and back together as you analyze, okay, what CDs do we have next here? And speaking of CD orders, one of the biggest things that we always watched out for was this combination of Void Weavers along with Silithid Warriors. This area, especially when we have Surging Darkness coming out, is when you want to start taking advantage of some of your more mobile raid cooldowns, maybe like the Aura Mastery or Spirit Link Totem, Healing Tide Totem, any of those things, because you do have to be moving around, and any channel effects like Divine Hymn, for example, are really not going to be helping you out all that much. I take this opportunity to get my ramp up here, and also to be able to get, like I said, those 16 atonements out and start dumping damage into the boss as the Surging Darkness ends. That way I can plant my feet and continue casting smites as rapidly as possible. The damage ramps up really well for Discipline just because of the dots that are going to come out from the Silithid Warriors, making it very easy for you to pump out and get really good value out of your Evangelism going through here. It's also extremely important, like I said, to make sure everybody's topped off for those rolling deceits, but also when you have the Void Weavers, in case any of them break out. I opted to go Divine Star instead of Halo, so I wouldn't risk breaking any Void Weavers out from Hunter Traps. Very common progression for some mistake to be able to break them out, and having a couple casts going off and immediately killing people is just going to be a disaster. So anytime that you can make sure everyone's topped off in this period to make up for some of those mistakes goes a very long way towards being able to get everybody back alive. And always make sure, like I said, you have your great opportunity here after the Void Weaver's dead to be able to chant a mana pot. Just make sure that you have a good keybind for it. as you're entering into just past the 50% mark, you have really gone through a lot of the worst that the fight is going to be bringing to you, but you do still have to be worrying about for this Rolling Deceit and Surging Darkness combination here. You know, as the room starts filling up with more of these clouds, you do have to watch your positioning to be able to not only be able to plant your feet, especially as a caster like Disc or Holy, but also to be able to watch out and spread for these eye beams very rapidly. Just, you know, 1 or 2 people taking damage from the eye beam. Usually if it's 1 extra person, they'll live, or they'll be dropped very low here, but they need to be able to get topped off quickly, collapse very rapidly to be able to take down this last wave of these warriors and the Void Weavers. And as I said, this is kind of going to be the cycle of where you really want to be moving out your raid cooldowns. And so what we opted to do in a lot of these situations is we got everything in together. If need be, we would be using some kind of smaller cooldowns, maybe a 2 minutes or something like that. But really, as we moved from the first Void Weaver to the second, that was where all the dot damage was coming in. That's where everyone was slowed, and that's where we started rotating through different cooldowns. So I would always have a ramp up at that period of time, assisted by another raid cooldown to be able to help us out. As you see here, you know, I had a ramp up just at around 5:30, finished up around 5:45, and then we had a Divine Hymn paired up with it as well here. So those are the big things that you want to be able to watch out for, as of course you're going to be going from Void Weaver to Void Weaver, and as the fight continues and you start going to this 40% mark, that's where you're going to be getting into really the raw burn on the fight. And as you hit to this point, most of the fight really kind of shuts down. You're not going to be having more ad spawns, you're not going to be having to really deal with a lot of the extra mechanics that kind of get mixed in. At this point, it's more or less going to be a straight burn. You should have a really large amount of your mana kind of consumed by this point, and to be able to just provide some minor healing to be able to deal with the ticking damage from the discs. Right here, you're also going to be able to see that we have the orb coming out. This Corruptor's Pact must be soaked. If it's not, it sits on the ground and pulses damage out onto everybody. And the strategy that we did, I think, was a little bit more unorthodox, and as you might imagine as you'll see this video, I'm not a very big fan of it, but the idea was to better time for DPSers. We had to sacrifice one of the healers, and it turns out yours truly got chosen for the sacrifice here. Some of the advantages to it is, as Disc, you're able to provide more of a burst of damage, but I think it could be a little bit better suited if you, like I said, follow this strategy. Mainly it was because if we had 5 healers. I think if we ran 4, we would actually just give it to the DPS to start with, but as it stood, we sacrificed one of the healers to be able to get it first. Then we made sure other people started soaking the orbs, and as we got a pretty good mass of people with orbs and cooldowns available, then we popped Bloodlust, and then we started to work to burn the boss. So as you're seeing from this floor point of view, at this point, you just have to make sure that you're not running into any of the Rolling Deceit clouds. You have to make sure the orb continues to bounce. And as you're seeing in that circular radius with the orb, it will actually travel wherever you are facing, or wherever you are standing when the orb impacts, right? So if you're standing in like a compass, for example, if you're standing at the north position, it will go north. If you're standing on the east position, it will go east. And so on and so forth. So you have some control over where it wants to bounce. And as a healer in this phase and you're in this raw burn, it's important still to be able to provide the damage, but you will see a lot of times where you're going to need priority externals. You know, things like Ironbark, for example, are extremely good for this. And even looking at maybe running into maybe some shorter duration cooldown, maybe something like Guardian Angel if really need be, because you have these situations where Surging Darkness will pair up with bouncing the orb, and somebody's going to need to be able to jump into Surging Darkness to be able to soak the orb, because the alternative is that everyone dies from the damage that goes out from that orb. So at this point, you should have most of your mana consumed. This is just the attrition healing of the fight. There's not a lot of damage otherwise that's going to be going out. If you do get any of the Servants of Yogg-Saron from touching any of the clouds, you can survive these. And ideally, those are the areas when you start looking at using Barrier, Emergency, bump up the Aura Mastery and Priority if you have one from the Holy Paladin. Those are the areas you're going to step up and accelerate the use of a cooldown to have available, but you don't necessarily want to bank through it. The way that we made this, our cooldown rotation and cooldown setup, was to always have something else something else available and continue cycling through it. Instead of a very hard raid cooldown order, we more or less set up who is going to be next on using their cooldown. And that way we'd always have somebody coming up next in case any of the Servants of Yogg-Saron had actually gone and popped and we had to deal with any of the big damage for it. So that was how we took down Zek'voz. Let me know what you guys think, because at least at this point in the fight, it is just going to be a straight hard burn, and you do need to be able to provide as much damage as possible and keep the last few remaining people left alive here. So hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. Let me know what you guys think. I'll be back with more Mythic videos and also Mythic progression on my live stream, which is linked in the description below very soon. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll catch you all next time.